Okay, so today we were going to talk about backend systems, and I had to shift things around a little bit because last week was crazy at work, and you all know Parse is shutting down. So what I taught the last few times is not applying anymore. So I need to do a considerable amount of research. And last week was just crazy. I barely slept, and this weekend I was like, fuck all of that. I'm not doing that. So I'm keeping it for Monday. Today we're going to talk about final projects. There's no slides for today. There's just a bunch of different things I want to cover that we had to skip or stuff like that. We're going to talk about some more Cocoapods. I want to show you guys some of my favorite ones that I by default go to. And we're going to talk about view controller lifecycle. We touched on that briefly with view load and stuff like that, but there's way more of those events that we can tap into. So that's today. I'm not sure if I can fill 3 hours with that today. We'll see. There's a pretty big exercise we're going to do, or you guys are going to do on networking, just in general. So practicing what we learned last week. We're going to be making an iPhone app for Urban Dictionary. So that's that. Let me actually push that to GitHub as we speak. Hit the status. All right. Before we get started, I wanted to talk about final project. Apparently I fucked up, and you guys should have apparently submitted a idea to me 2 weeks ago, which clearly did not happen. So the idea is that you guys write, like, I don't know, half a page, 2 paragraphs, something like that, on what you want to make, what you want to solve with it, what your goals are for the final project and on the longer term, which might be none, right? Like, if you just want to make a final project and then never look at it again, that's fine. It's more for us to know because, I mean, not everything is going to be possible to make in the coming 3 weeks. So if you say, I want to make, for instance, let's take Instagram, and you are like, I just want to focus on like the sharing functionality rather than like users or comments, that's fine. It doesn't need to be something that is fully finished for me, but I do want you to use a considerable amount of knowledge that we learned in the past 2 months, 3 months. So let's take a look at the written out version of what Jay says. I might be crossing some things out or saying, if you have time, because I feel this is very, very big thing to do. So let's take a calendar, take a look at what's left. Month. So today is April 4th, and April 25th is final presentation. So you're going to be presenting your final project in class to other students. You can bring family, friends, whoever you want. Jay will be providing beers and champagne, probably. You can chill out a little bit afterwards, whatever. I mean, there's only 6 or 7 of us, so it's not going to take 3 hours, I would assume. But that leaves us with today, which is already filled. Wednesday, CloudKit, I think. I started looking into it. It looks pretty cool. But if anyone has really strong desire to learn Firebase, that's fine by me too. Yes, you do. It's a lot of overhead, but sure. I'm going to tell you why it's a lot of overhead. You have to worry about user accounts, stuff like that, registering users, logging in users, and I feel like a lot of students spend all their effort there, and then for their final project, and then they only have like log in and log out and registering working, which is fine by me. If you want to use Firebase, I can learn Firebase by Wednesday, I guess. I'll try to do my very best to get it done by Wednesday. I would rather postpone it to next Monday, if anything, and do it the right way, rather than now rushing it. And that leads us to the next thing I want to talk about. So let's say today and Wednesday are filled up. That leaves us with the 11th, the 13th, the 18th, and the 28th. I think I want to do 2 of these as in class working on final projects and having us here to help you out, because it's going to be a lot. And now it needs to come all together, and this is a really important next 3 weeks. It needs to all like click together, what we've seen over the past weeks. So let's say we do that on the 18th and the 20th. That leaves us with the 11th and the 13th for the extra classes that you guys can choose. So by the end of this week, ideally by Thursday even, I have an idea at least what Monday needs to be, because I need to prepare those too. Some of the things that I can think about is photo plus camera, location, and maps, fitness, watch kit even, TV kit. You can talk more about like core audio and stuff like that. Whatever you guys want to do, it's going to be a vote. So the 2 subjects with most votes win. I'm thinking what's the best way to organize this. Just drop a message in Slack for the 2 things you want. I mean, there's only 7 of us or 6. I think that's going to work. So I'll post in Slack in a bit, so while you guys are working, so the people who are not here today see it too, and then you guys can cancel it. Are there any questions about this? Things you don't know how to describe what you want to be able to do, but like you describe it, maybe I can put a name on it. Fitness? Yeah. So you can get access to the health data that is yes, on your own iPhone. So I mean, depending on what you're trying to do, like some people probably turn it off or don't gather any data, but like if you have a watch or you use Moves, which is an application Facebook account owns, or like Strava or Nike Plus, these all input this data into HealthKit. And as a third-party developer, you can get access to that data.
Location and maps, is that for geofencing?
Yeah, so that's what I did last time. I set up some geofencing stuff. I mean, there's so much you can talk about, but geofencing is not like hard or anything, but it's like quite a lot of code. So if you get that, all the other location things are pretty straightforward.
Could you cover, I guess, best practices for the user account? That might be a Saturday or something.
For the user account, what does that mean?
Yeah, like creating the user and all of that stuff, like creating an account.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. The thing is, so you have 2 options, right? First option is we'll do CloudKit. Apple takes care of that. Second one is Firebase. Sure. And then the third one is when you want to be for real, you need to be writing backend code. So that one is going to be very hard to do in the afternoon. I'm also not a backend developer. I can do some stuff in it, but it's not what I do on a daily basis. So the only thing I would say that we can do is Firebase. So what are you talking about then? Registering for getting your password, logging in?
Yeah, just the basics of to get us an app store. If we want to get an app store, like, is that something that we could do, or would we need to rely on like a backend?
No, I mean there's definitely a lot of apps that run on Parks or Firebase. If it's just storing content associated to a user, that's pretty straightforward. That's something Parks and Firebase can do. It gets a little bit more complex, but you're not going to write Facebook with a Parks backend or with a Firebase backend. There's a lot of relationships, complex stuff, then it's of course complex. I mean, we could even, if you guys would think that's fun, we can say like, oh, like, can we start building 3 hours of like, for instance, an app like Instagram or something like that. Whatever you guys think. But then again, that would be a lot of repetition because we've done already a decent amount of those things. The thing is also like registering users and logging in is really not hard because all you do is you go to Firebase, keeps it in parts. Firebase says yes, a user with this email and password exists, or no, it does not. The moment it does, you switch view controllers and you set a flag, and it's user default saying user is logged in or something like that. And you store the user ID, user email, and not the password, but those 2. So
I guess I'm just curious on.
I think it would be, if anything, a more like advanced Firebase tutorial, because whatever, or class, whatever we're going to do on Wednesday is not going to be that crazy. It's going to be, like, for instance, a student code tracking application that just instead of using core data uses. And then there's the added complexity, also something we haven't covered yet, and I have to admit, not super excited about it if I would have to learn about that or teach you guys about that, but there's no like, we'll see core data, we'll see Firebase, but I mean, ideally an app uses both, right? Like, if it loads, it's there, but then it goes out to the network, refreshes, but then you need to sort through all your data, keep stuff in sync, gets pretty messy and technical. But I also feel like maybe focus on stuff that is relevant now. Like, if you can get everything but that up and running, and you really want to make an app, and your goal is to like get money, like, if you can pitch that and be like, yo, this is what I made. It doesn't include syncing with like core data or anything. Believe me, if your idea is good, they're not going to be like, oh, but sir, you need to sync your data with core data and Fire. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's also the thing where if you really get to that point, you probably want to have some people on board with you. You had a question?
No, what did you rank above core audio?
PBK. Yeah.
So for my final project, I'm thinking what I want to do is just like a 10-song playlist and like that I can update it myself.
What's qualifying?
Yes, SoundCloud.
You sure? So SoundCloud?
Yeah, SoundCloud. I'd much rather do SoundCloud, but with that,
but they have playlist functionality, don't they?
Yeah, I know, but I want to do it.
Okay. Yeah, it's fair.
Or is that core audio? Or?
I don't think it is. You'll want to use, actually, let me see if that is even a thing. You'll want to use the SoundCloud iOS SDK.
Is there anything else anyone wants to add to this? I'm going to put a poll. I'm putting a poll together that's going to go on Slack channel. So all your.
How much time do you have to think?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I want to get this list finalized by Thursday. So if you want to.
I was trying to put it today, and then they can vote on it until Thursday.
Well, on the final project, you have a list of.
Yeah. So yes, that's a good point. So one of the things the final project says is that you need to at least use two different frameworks than UIKit, which we talked about, right? So for core audio, core motion, core text, event kit, which allows you to like interact with the user's calendar. Game kit, I honestly don't want to teach that one because if you use game kit, you need to start talking about learning to make games in iOS, and that puts us on another 6 weeks. Map kit, pass kit, health kit, store kit, Sprite kit, and what is this format? Inclusion and use of okay. I think 2 is aggressive. I definitely want to see one thing else than UI kit. So I need something, right? I need something extra, and I'm very well aware that we haven't talked about any of these, and that's part of the thing. You need to be able now to go out there and dig in yourself and figure it out.
Oh, what about calendar?
Yeah, I mean, any of these things is fine by me. Calendar is super easy. I think you could do that in like an hour and a half, something like that. It's also this thing where we're gonna have 2 in-class workshops. If you feel comfortable with where you are in your app and you want to use us to talk about something else, we're here. There's office hours too. I was gonna say one more thing. Oh, this is well, it's not Sprite kit. I think we briefly touched on core graphics, but honestly we didn't do shit with it. Animation is another thing I did last time, I think in MOB3. I'm still willing to give a design workshop, but that was way more focused on actually designing an app and porting that design into an actual app. So we can do that on a Saturday, which is still fine, and I still want to do one, or we can do that as one of these classes. But animation was definitely a different thing you want to tackle. I'm a very big fan of Facebook Pop. They have one of the best animation frameworks out there for iOS. So in this class, I talked about core graphics, animation using core animation, which is not on this list, but also it's in core animation. And I talked about core graphics in general, shapes, layers, custom drawing, stuff like that. So that's definitely a big block. And again, I can't teach you everything in 3 hours, but that will get you quite far. Did I show the application I made last time?
Yeah, I think you put it up there.
No, it was like a surfing spot application. I showed it during office hours or something. If not, I'll try to get it running because it's an old Swift syntax while you guys work on the assignment. So that's a very big one. For the design workshop, I'll need to find a date, and we're running out of time. So either going to be this Sunday, definitely not Saturday, or next week. I guess there's not much else left. So keep that in mind. I'll check and post on Slack to update everyone on that. I'm not going to do this for 1 or 2 people and then just do office hours instead. And it's like, what?
Sunday works.
I'll have to figure out, because I also, the more towards the end of this class, this is getting a lot rougher for me too, because all these subjects are very big and not also my everyday thing. So if I have to do end the design workshop on Sunday and prepare complete subject for Monday, that's quite a lot of work. So I need to figure that out somehow too. Maybe I'll do it next week because then the 2 classes are over that I had to research, and then I can spend Thursday and Friday preparing the workshop on Sunday. I'd rather do that and then be prepared for next Monday with one of these. I mean, we can do this during class too, I don't care. So, I mean, I feel like this is pretty good. So core graphics plus animation is definitely one thing. For audio, I honestly don't really know what we would do with that. I think making DJ app. Sure, if you guys want that. So it's maybe can we make like a poll somewhere where people can add, and then they can add like options. Google Forms. Does that sound crazy?
I'll put something together.
Or a Google Sheet? Yeah. So I would definitely say 1. If you want to go with 2, sure, be my guest. We're going to go through this from the top, but this is the list GA gives you. I also am very much not a fan of just adding something to, like to check off a box. That's not necessary for me. I'd rather have you do something substantial with MapKit rather than like as a second one, drop in a map and be like, oh, I used MapKit. You know what I mean? Like, all right, let's take a look. So this is also a group project if you want it to be. You can go solo, you can work in groups of 2 or 3 if you have a group of 3 that's happening in class, which is fine by me. But I'm just saying. If that is the case, I definitely want to be able to tell who did what. And if we do that, we're going to be using GitHub, which we haven't done yet, as like a combination, so I can see who actually did what. You can see on GitHub who added which line of code. It's crazy. Because I don't want somebody to say like, oh, I made this and I didn't do anything. So this is what I'm going to need, and I'm going to need this by the end of the week. I know that's really quick, but I think a lot of you already have an idea of what you want to build, so it's just a matter of writing out those 2 paragraphs. 1 page, 2 paragraphs, whatever. I need to be able to get what it is, and I'll update this. So the title, what it's going to do, requirements, rough wireframes, I don't really care about, or primary upload. The last part, forget about it. I am more interested in knowing what you want to achieve for your midterm or for your final, knowing that you have 3 weeks basically, starting today, and what you want to do with it maybe after that. If you don't want to do anything, just don't, right? I don't want to do anything after this. This is just my project. That's fine with me. But it would be great if you could all write that down. I'm definitely going to be checking in with everyone weekly in class. I don't need you to submit betas through test flight. We can talk about doing that though, how you would do that. Happy to do that. Let's see. Oh, and we can definitely also talk about implementing Crashlytics. You can actually maybe do that today. It's super easy. Crashlytics is a company that Twitter bought that just requires you to drag in a framework into your application. And every time the app crashes, the data of the crash is submitted to a dashboard. So it's really useful as a developer. Let me actually see if I can find the one for Dot. A lot of crashes there. They do, yeah. So we can talk about that too. Login. This website is so ugly. And they're part of Fabric, apparently. It's Twitter's like overarching. I have 2 accounts and I never know which one it is. I also might have been kicked out because we said bye to them. Yeah, it looks like it. Let's take a look. They probably have a preview on their website. Crashlytics. So it gives you a lot of information. This is so impossible to read. It gives you analytics like Google Analytics would, but it also allows you to gather crash data, fix bugs that way. It's a very common way. Like a crash that happens 3,000 times is more pressing to fix than a crash that happened for 5 users. So that's definitely how we prioritized the updates, stuff like that. Super easy to implement. Might be doing that today if we have some extra time. So implementing that in your app, sure, super easy, shouldn't be that hard to do, so that works. So your final project needs to use either persistency, so core data, or files, and as user default, it doesn't count because that's 2 lines of code. Or a remote web server, so Firebase, or an API of some kind. I don't really care which one. So gather usage through Google Analytics, Flurry, again, Fabric or Crashlytics has it too. Cocoapods, you need to use at least 1 Cocopod in your application. Now, we're going to talk about some more Cocoapods today. I think this is like not really a hard thing to do because adding Cocoapods makes your life easier. So it's like saying you have to make your life easier. Well, I hope you want to make your life easier, so that should be pretty straightforward. We're going to be using all layout, either encode or interface builder. We're going to be using a Cocopod today called SnapKit, which will make it encode super easy to do. And apps must be, well, I don't agree with that. As I said, if you are working on something bigger, I don't want you to now spend 3 weeks building something just for the sake of having it and then never do something with it. But I mean, it needs to look polished, or at least some parts like that you don't have a lot of time. And if you start building a feature out and you thought it was going to take you a couple of hours and then ended up taking a lot longer, sure. But like, I don't want to have an app with every screen white background and blue buttons and some textuals in the middle of the thing, and that's it. So do your best to make it look a little polished. Let's see, additional requirements. If you want to use Trello, be my guest. I don't really care. Trello is, by the way, like a Scrum kind of board, which allows you to. Do you want to use it before? It's pretty cool. I used to use it at work, so it like allows you to create tasks and drag them around and keep track of what you still have to do. Yeah, it's like keeping track of what is happening. A lot of open source projects use it, where if you want to tackle a bug in a project, you take it, or you move it into like working or like in development or something, and then other people can see what's going on. If you want to go all the way, be my guest, you can make your app accessible, which means readable for people who don't, or usable for people who have bad vision, bad hearing, who are colorblind. iOS is very, very good at allowing developers to do that. it is very much of an extra effort. And sadly, also, and I am also one to blame here, but it's an afterthought. People build an app, they submit three big versions to the store, work on it for a year, and then things are finally settling down, and they're like, maybe we should work on like our accessibility. So, but it's definitely possible, and it's not super hard to do. Localize your app in one or many, if you care, languages. iOS is great at supporting multiple languages, right to left, display, even stuff like that. And these are all bonus, by the way, so you don't have to do all of this. Have a debug mode, which assists in logging debugging. Really useful. I actually built it into Dot, where if you would hold down on the start screen, it would show the data in a table view that is readable and easy to interact with. You can easily delete stuff. I did that for my own pure sanity to not go crazy, but you can use it. And if you want to learn and read up on concurrency and multi-threading and offloading work to a different thread to do crazy stuff, be my guest, but I don't think you'll need this. But it's definitely there.
What does that allow you to do?
What?
What does that allow?
So like I said with the you remember this diagram where you said like main thread? So the main thread is always running, and the only thing the main thread should really care about, or cares about a lot of things, but the only thing it can never compromise on is snappiness and responsiveness to the user. So if you're doing something on the main thread that is not allowing that, you need to spin off on a different thread to do whatever task that is like currently blocking your user interface.
And you do that through concurrency.
Yes. Grand Central dispatches are called in iOS world. It's pretty low level, so it's definitely one of the harder concepts in iOS development to deal with. So submission and final app with code, resources, projects files, and screenshot upload to your GitHub repo. Send your GitHub page, but I think I'll be able to find seven folders of students, and README with the explanation of the approach taken. And let's do it like this. This submission thing you have to make for me this week, create a Markdown. Is everyone familiar with Markdown? No, don't worry about it. Just post it in Slack, or Markdown is what powers this, by the way. Super easy to read or learn. I actually have a Markdown editor open here, and if we look, I was working on this today. How does the internet work? So it's like, for instance, you have a big title. So like, for instance, this results in, it's hard to see maybe on screen, but it results in like different sizes, stuff like that. You can easily do underlines just by doing this. So it's like a very easy to write formatting language. So don't worry about it. So post this README. Maybe I will make you do it, but for now, just a TXT file is enough. Just put it on your GitHub account and send me the link. So this is for your proposition. Create a TXT file, put it in your GitHub structure, create a folder for your final assignment, upload it, and send me the link to that. Okay. So I think we lost these two weeks. Is that correct? Are we week 9? So do what you can. I definitely should have talked about this earlier, brought this up earlier apparently. But I'm confident that you guys will do a great job. All right. So what is important? Stability is definitely one of the biggest ones to me. Like, I don't want your app to crash the first time I run it, neither do I want it to crash the second time I run it. Style is definitely also somewhat important. I think it's really important you guys have a very good knowledge now of how to make apps, that if you use somebody else's app, that you like analyze that very like passively. Like, that's something you should train yourself on. So for instance, that you don't end up putting a segmented control as an add button somewhere in the top right. You know what I mean? Like, be aware of the fact that everything in iOS, if you want to add something to a table view, is a plus button on the top right. And don't like do something, don't invent new stuff. People are used to some kind of design pattern and flow. So the style is not even to me about how it visually looks. It's It's more about like design best practices on iOS. I think everyone here has an iPhone, so you've been using them for months and months. So maybe it's time to consciously think about how other apps tackle problems. This is decently important. I'm gonna give another introduction today when you guys make the what is that, Urban Dictionary stuff. Like last week we were doing the request and stuff in a view controller, which is probably not where you should be doing requests. They should be uploaded to a different class. So today I'll force you to do that. The view controller should be controlling the view. So try to split things up the right way. I know we didn't talk about that enough because there's just no time for it. But if you want to have feedback on your progress in the coming weeks and tips on that, definitely happy to do that. Then there's some other things. You will be presenting. You can use whatever you want, a keynote. I also don't know, but you can use the simulator, but let's say you are really required to, for instance, have a camera working, which is not possible in the simulator. If you plug in your phone and you open up QuickTime and you do File, New Movie Recording. Oh, this is probably gonna fuck up my Google recording. You can choose your iPhone and you can see the screen of your iPhone on your computer. So you can use this for presenting. So it's just your functional iPhone. So you will be presenting whatever you have for everyone that day. Let me double check my Google. Okay, fine. Rubric.
How did you do that again?
No. QuickTime. And then new movie recording, and then you have a drop down to choose which camera you want, and this shows up as a camera, like it would be your eyesight camera or something. Some resources and some suggestions to get started. You can, I mean, you don't have to create the next Instagram, by the way. This is the examples they give you. If you don't know what to do, I'd rather have you build something smaller and make it polished and good and stable over trying to make the next social network that gets you to log in and register, and then I'm like, okay, now what? You know what I mean? That's it. Any questions about this? No? All right. All right.
Wait, what does it mean by the live tracker?
A flight tracker? Like you enter a, you've never used a flight tracker?
You track where you fly?
Yeah. So you can do, you can say, for instance, from DCA to LAX. So you can enter either flight number or an airline, or you can just do it like this, airline, American. And then you can find the flight and you can see how far long it is in its, see in air. You can see this. So there's definitely APIs to do this too. Or a Bitcoin currency, I mean, something like that is actually perfect. It's a 1-2 screen. I would say try to focus your effort on 1 or 2, or let's say 3 screens and make them good. Make sure there's functionality in them. I mean, I don't want 3 dumb screens. I'd rather then you would have 5 screens where 2 of them are like a considered amount of things doing. Rather that than 17 unpolished, not finished screens. There's also, you can here talk about how you would want to do it, you know what I mean? Like, or what you would be adding in the future. It doesn't need to be fully functional. All right, let's talk about this. We're going to be creating a Urban Dictionary client. They have a very ugly iPhone app, and this is equally as ugly. But it is as another exercise to do some networking, talk about APIs. Funny story, they don't have an official API client, so this is undocumented. Their own app uses it. That's how people find out about it. But it's not like they have a developers page where it says like, these are all the things you can do with it. So that's another thing. But I'm gonna, so what do you guys have to build? I didn't build it myself yet. I'm gonna build it as you guys do it, but it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna be adding a search term here. You're gonna hit return. It's gonna go out to Urban Dictionary. And let's say you fill out swag, because that's the example I've been using. It should say swag here, the definition here, and an example which you get back from the API to here. So constraints are set up, and that is the only thing that is set up. So you're going to be going over text field delegate again and networking. And the only other thing I set up is this network helper class, because I don't want you to write your networking code in the view controller. So that was it. Is this readable to you guys? Did we talk about class functions already? I think we did, right?
Not class function.
Well, we're going to talk about them today. So I created this class function here, get info for query, where query would, for instance, be what the user entered from the text field, like swag. And in here, you'll do your request to Urban Dictionary. And then I also entered this completion block, which is an anonymous function, which looks scary as fuck. But the only thing it does is it takes an optional NS error and optional JSON file. And we're using our good friend Swifty JSON. So what that would look like is, how do you use that? Is maybe a good question you would have. Oh, also this is the URL, by the way. So api.urbandictionary.com version null, define, and then term, whatever the term is that the user entered, right? Right now, it's hard-coded swag. Two things you need to know. The internet URLs don't use spaces. So let's say you want to, I really saw some fucked up shit today on the Urban Dictionary site. But there we go. Let's say you want to look for that using the API. What you would do is, and you can copy this into your browser, spaces are encoded either with a %20 sign or a plus sign. And Urban Dictionary uses a plus sign. So you in your Swift code will have to replace all spaces with plus. And I included a function call that you can look up. So list is all the possible definitions. So let's say a word has more than one definition. I don't want you to care about that. You take the first one all the time for now. You could create like a swipeable or list kind of view, doesn't matter. So you can see definition, example, yo, I have no fucking idea what I ate, but I have been pushing as liquid for 3 days straight. This is very inappropriate. This video cannot go public of me talking about this. And then this is also interesting, result type exact. You also will have to worry about what if the user enters even bigger bullshit than as liquid. So let's say they do this, you'll see that result type is no result. So handle it accordingly. I don't care what you do, either just empty everything so it doesn't display anything, show the error message, show a pop-up, do whatever, but handle it. And that's it.
Should spaces and URLs are plus 4%?
Yes, %20.
%20.
%20 is a space.
And then what about the question mark between define and term?
Oh, that is the way URLs are generated. So this is the URL up until define, and then everything below, after the question mark is what we call the query string with query parameters. And query parameters are structured like this, like key equals value. And if you have multiple, so let's say foobar, and then for instance, if you have multiple, they're put together with an ampersand. It would be like version equals version 0, but I mean version is already there. So you have actual URL parameters, like this one, version 0, and this is what we call the query string. No results are foo. Oh, it's still loading. Ooh. See? An unimportant variable in programming when the programmer is too lazy to think of an actual name. That's why I type foo all the time. So this is what a result set looks like when you have something that might have multiple definitions. I only care about this one. So don't worry about displaying the other ones. Now, about the completion block, I don't know if I actually should tell you how to use it. Maybe I should. Okay, first things first, class function. So let's say you have your function here, user did press enter or something, which is not what it's called. It's going to be a delegate method, right? Remember, textual should return or something. User did press enter, but let's say it's this. How do you use this function? So remember, with a normal class, you would have to do network helper equals network helper, right? And then you could call a function on this network helper, on the instance, right? Done this plenty. Now, class functions are really cool because you can just do this. Let result, no, just utilities, network utilities. What did I call it? Network helper. And then you don't need to instantiate it. You can just call it straight on network helper. Now, the thing is, network helper at this moment cannot keep track of state, which is fine in this case because it's making a request and returning whatever it got back. But you can keep a variable in there and use class functions to it won't even let you allow to modify variables. So this should look familiar because if you look at UI color, you'll see that these are actually functions and these are defined as class functions. So if you look here, public class func, and let's say you have UI color, not going to let me do that, but what that looks like is class func yellow color, and that returns the UI color, and it just does this in the implementation, pretty sure. Red, blah, blah, 0.2, green, 0.3, blue, 0.3, alpha. What? Does this make sense? So class function, in this case, it's not going to return anything. Simple reason, functions return immediately. Networking is not returning immediately, so it's asynchronous. That's why we need a completion block, which is an anonymous function that will fire if the network call returns. But in this case, the class function can return immediately. It's just UI color. So that's what Apple does to let you do that. Does that make sense? And just as a proof, in our network helper, let's say we have, let's say we want to keep track of a try count, right? Like the amount of tries it should try if it fails. If you try to do something here like try count, see, it's not even going to give you code hinting on it. Because you're in a class function, class functions don't have access to state. Because this class has never been initialized, so try count has never been set to 0. It's just executing this function on this class. Does that make sense? I love them when it comes to not keeping track of state because you don't need to initialize a network helper. You can just call your functions immediately on network helper, and at least your functions, all your network functions, in this case there's only going to be one, but they're all in one class and they're not in view control. So really nice.
When you say not keeping track of state, you mean state of the function trying to call the
network helper cannot have state. Well, it could if you have other functions and class functions, but if you use class functions, you can't do something like this, try count plus plus. Let's say you do try count plus plus, and then let's say if it fails, you would do if try count smaller than 5, try again or something. You can't do this because you can't keep track of state. This is state at this moment, variables or something like that.
when you say state, I'm confused.
Variables.
Oh, so
Variables are state from a class, right? So they're just functions. They don't have access to any properties on the class, and everything they do or need should be containable within this class func, and they have no access to anything on top or below it. Make sense? Yes? All right, I want you guys to get started on this. I know I didn't talk about completion block. Should I? I feel like it's a fun thing to discover yourself. Okay, maybe I should talk about it. Maybe I should talk about it. So let's say you do your request here, right? Network helper. So it would be, I already forgot what I named it. Get info for query. So let's say we want to know what foo is about, right? And if I go here, this is my completion block. So I'll just hit return. And you should recognize this. This is very similar to the anonymous function that data task with URL gives you. So up here you could do error handling and then update UI on the main thread because you're on a different thread, right? This function will get called from the network handler completion, so it will be called from a different thread. So what does that look like in your network helper? I'm going to type this and then delete it, but I'm actually giving you the answer right now. So let task equals, and it's URL session, dot shared session, data task with URL. Don't write this on one line, please. This is just now for quickly showing it. And let's say this is a valid URL. It's completely not. Data, response. You probably want to do an error check here too or something. And then what you do is, you don't return anything, but you do completion block. And then here, your Swift to JSON array. So the moment you call this, that anonymous function in your view controller is going to execute. So the moment that the network returns the data, you call this function, completion block, which is the function that you passed in right here. Just started with hooking up your user interface, making your request, printing out your request, converting it to a JSON, and if you get stuck on this part, we can do it together. Cool? Let's say 30 minutes, something like that.
So you installed Swift to JSON last time.
I already installed it for you. Did you open up the XC workspace instead of the XC project? Did you build it?
Less than 18, or like where is it?
I think this is lesson 18, yes. Is it not?
Yeah, I don't think
Pretty sure I did.
yeah.
It's called Urban, under lesson 18.
I don't think I pulled it down. That would explain it. Oh, okay.
It's a project.
Yes, so if you deal with Cocoapods, which I already installed for you, you open up the XC workspace, not ever the XC project anymore. That's from now on Cocoapods XC workspace.
I don't know what it is. Yeah. I just need to. I'm trying to.
Let's say we have four people saying one thing, and that's the foremost. Do I get to choose? Like, what do we do if it's like 4 things with 2? We can make a new poll then. We can just keep making polls until we eliminate it to 2 options.
Well, you had the core graphics and animation. So I think in one
Just
class.
I'm just trying to. Every time.
Into what? The core graphics and animation, I think you said you covered in one class, right?
Yes, I would. Is it not saying that?
No, I think they're separate.
I fucking hate this. You can't pause this. What is this? I wanted to type example label, and I typed example lady for some reason. Not really sure why. Hey. We just started 30 minutes of exercise. Is that fine? I just wanted to tell you.
So we start with like URL. It doesn't have the same JSON as the app that we had last time. So I have to find a way to convert the text field spaces into plus.
Yeah, so we have your text field delegate and stuff set up. It's like we have search term already. So start worrying about getting the contents of the text field first with spaces, and then send that to the network helper, and in there it should, you could create another function that does that for you, whatever you want to do. It might create a utility that like replaces all spaces with your process.
Wait, what? So what should I do when I don't know what's really going on.
That's okay, right? So,
What?
so we'll handle that tonight. And we'll figure it out.
What happened?
Just forget, like the DS file that you can generate and stuff like that.
Oh.
But go ahead and work on the exercise and take care of that.
Wasn't the DS
I should update get ignore to ignore those files.
Put the JSON extension. To simplify it,
JSON viewer. Another cool one, by the way, let me show it to you, is Postman, because it remembers your history, which is really cool. So you see, this fucking projector, man. Let's see. Work. So JSON viewer is the one we used last time. So that gives you this, where you can easily click through the JSON file. What I also like to use, it might be overkill for this, but so what we're doing right now are GET requests, right? So like we're getting data from a web server. Now a lot of things also happen over a POST request. A POST request is used when you submit a form on a website, because you want that data to be hidden from your network request. Because everything we do right now, like if somebody is monitoring your network data, your search term is going to be visible to them, which is no big deal. You're going to Urban Dictionary. There's worse things. But if you're submitting bank data, you don't want your username and password to be part of that like URL that you're calling. So that is when a post happens, it adds those as metadata on a request. So it's way harder to intercept that and see. And so you can't do that in your URL. Let's say your API requires you to do a post request. You can't just do it in here, pass in your data. That's just not going to work. So I installed this, or it's a very popular extension called Postman. And you can actually also use it. I was using it. I forgot about the JSON viewer. I was using it to do the Urban Dictionary stuff too. So it's like an actual Chrome extension. And it launches a whole new application, which is mildly confusing in the beginning. But what is really cool is it keeps track or history of all your requests. So let's say you, in 2 weeks, want to revisit this, you don't need to remember the request. For instance, you'll see here, I was doing, for instance, and I can just click it again, and you'll see by default it is a GET. You can submit post requests here too, and I can hit send, and it will also be pretty readable. So definitely a highly recommended tool if you want to work with APIs, because we've been doing post requests, and on the iOS side of things, it doesn't change much. It changes a little bit what you have to do, but not much. But either you have to run your iOS app every time and try it, or you need something like this where you can actually create post requests. It's called Postman. So, and it keeps track of your history. You can create collections, for instance. So we're actually working on an app that will use this. So I stored this one request in a collection, which is just going to be a folder of all the requests that application is able to make, so I can easily preview them and see what's up. How do you mean?
Like when people are referring to REST client, REST API, are they referring to specific?
REST is a technology that is used to describe this API or most APIs nowadays. Okay. I can talk about that for a while, but basically REST APIs allow you to do get, post, put, delete, request. It's more of a design philosophy when writing your code for API developers, so don't worry about that too much.
So it's not like, oh, I'm using the REST API. It's more like this is.
No, it's just like kind of specifications you agree on when you want to make a REST API. How that API is actually implemented is still totally wide open. It can use PHP, it can use Node, it can probably use Ruby, it can use Python. It's just more of like, if I want to create an API and I want it to be a REST API, I will follow these like rules, so to say.
And then you get like certified as a REST API?
No, there's no such thing. It's just something that developers understand. Oh, it's a REST API, not the REST API. Well, if the projector, or there we go, somewhat works, I'll take it for now. Just want to explain one more thing. As I said, iOS by default, since iOS 9 doesn't allow transport anymore over HTTP, so it requires HTTPS basically. Now, if you have your own server, you should be implementing SSL certificates on your own server. Like, this is a really good thing for users. It's generally a good thing for everyone. Now, this is not our server. This is Urban Dictionary's API. They use HTTP. I can't really help that, so it's not really my fault. And actually, let me just double check that it only works over HTTP. So it's not HTTPS. So you need to tell iOS that you want to use HTTP and say that's what I want to do. So there's two options. I mean, both of the options are in your P list. I hope you don't think that I can remember this. So this is something I have to Google every time. You have two options. Either you create a whitelist of things you want to accept over HTTP. So in this case, that would be a good example. So it would be dictionary.com, and just this, I think maybe you have to take this out, but all the other things you can pretty much keep in. But I don't want to worry about this, so I'm just going to allow every HTTP request. So it's this code snippet, and you need to put it in info.plist. So you do open as source code, and you just at the end append it right before the closing dictionary tag. That's it. If you now do open as property list again, you'll see that you can also type it in here, but I think it's just easier if you copy and paste it in. You do Command C here, and then Command V in the property. No, info.plist is something you get in all your applications by default.
So you can just highlight that and hit Control V.
No. I did open as source code, and then here at the bottom, it wasn't here. I pasted it in. I know it was like at the speed of light. I'm well aware. I'm sorry. I should have done this. So yeah, and then it will not complain because it won't actually allow you to do a request until you fix this. Does that make sense? What I just said? Okay.
What did you say?
So by default, the internet works using a protocol called HTTP. Remember, before each website, you type this, or at least if you don't type it, it adds it for you, right? This was, up until 5 years, the way to go. Now everyone is moving to HTTPS, which is secure and encrypted. Apple decided since iOS 9 that all requests coming from an iOS app should happen over HTTPS. The problem is Urban Dictionary still uses HTTP. So we need to explicitly tell our application that it's okay to use an HTTP or to make HTTP requests, and that we are aware of the dangers of that, because this is not encrypted. You can easily intercept this traffic, modify it, steal identities, all those things. Now, Urban Dictionary doesn't, no big deal, but your bank, your bank is definitely using HTTPS, and you want it to be using HTTPS. So to fix that, you need to copy and paste this code in your info.plist.
You got the code from Urban Dictionary.
No, I just did allow iOS 9 HTTP. I'm going to post a link, or I'm going to actually post a snippet on. Otherwise, it will give you this error. An SSL error has secured, and secure connection to the server could not be made or something. How are we doing? My computer is so slow. Yeah.
If you select you have the solutions with
Does it create value? What?
I don't know what it looks. I don't know here. Yeah, hit it.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, every time you open it in, it's possible to change stuff. That's fine. It's good to keep track of it closely. So that completed. Okay. All right, let's see. This should have fixed it. No, I don't want you to do that. Like, it's more work to every time this card these changes that it's going to make than just to commit them. There's no like reason why you wouldn't commit them. You start the exercise already?
No, but.
Hey, we said we would take care of this after class.
But why?
It's gone. That's how Xcode works. You can't help that. You want it. It's a good thing generally because if you close a project and you open it later on, it's going to be in the state you left it, which is really nice half the time. It's annoying that it keeps track of it in Git. You could have fixed that. Every project you typically start in Git, if you would start on yourself, you would. There's this hidden file you can add to every GIF file. Right now, I edited it for you. Let me actually.
I think great.
See, it's a hidden file, and by default, you would add something like this, which is a default file, which in your case is a GIF. And you add all the files that you want to be ignored by the GIF. So next time it shouldn't. Oh yeah, do a commit message. But next time, see like what is here? I see user state.
But if I didn't make any changes in classes, and then I
It is. That is Xcode. So if you open up the
Oh, but you
project,
have to create comments.
yes, that's why you would want these in your Git. But I don't think it will in your Git because it's just you. Yes. So it's not like anybody else is going to like suddenly change that file and your project is going to look different and you will have conflicts.
So I click on it.
Yes.
It doesn't work.
Fuck.
It's 8 o'clock.
If you want to take a break, go ahead. I'm going to start going over the solution at 8:10.
Still generated the DS store file in my folder, so I can't pull from that folder.
Because I added this. I should add this gate mode just for This didn't work. Let me actually add this getting more to mine because I'm. I'm gonna add this getting more to mine too because I don't know why it keeps doing that.